A federal appeals court ruled that President Trump overstepped his authority when he used emergency powers to launch sweeping tariffs in April. Now, as you heard, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro says they're ready to take the case all the way to the Supreme Court. On Friday, the panel ruled that the power to impose tariffs lies in fact with Congress, the appeals court did, not the president. Joining us now, MSNBC White House correspondent Akayla Gardner and CNBC senior analyst and commentator and publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack, Ron Insana. So, Akayla, what authority does the president believe he has despite this ruling?
Well, the president believes he has sweeping authority. And as you said, he's promising to take this case to the Supreme Court where it's likely to go. This federal appeals court essentially said that their use of an Emergency Powers Act known as IEPA was not valid. And this upheld an earlier decision by the Court of International Trade. But for now, these tariffs remain in effect until October 14. And we should clarify this only affects some of the president's tariffs. That's including reciprocal tariffs, those really broad sweeping tariffs we've seen imposed on dozens of countries, and also those fentanyl trafficking tariffs, which affect Canada, Mexico, and China. Those remain in effect. What still is allowed that they're saying is the steel and aluminum tariffs, those sectoral tariffs, if you will, on semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. Also some tariffs that President Trump imposed in his first term. President Biden also notably let those in. And they're still allowing him to revoke this de minimis rule, which essentially allows small or low price goods to come into the United States without being affected by tariffs. Those still will be ended.
All right, Ron, tariffs so far. Effective, ineffective? What's it going to mean if the country has to pay back tariffs it's already levied?
Well, we don't know exactly how much has been collected. It's somewhere between $100 and $150 billion, Katie. And businesses, as I understand it, would have to apply for rebates in order to get any of the duties, customs duties or import taxes that they've already paid refunded to them. And that might take us well into next year with respect to that. So it's still a rather complicated picture. None of it becomes clear unless or until the Supreme Court makes a decision. The one thing I will say is if they are indeed rolled back, unlike what Peter Navarro and President Trump have both said, this will not end the United States. World War II didn't do that. The Depression didn't do that. Even the Civil War, for all intents and purposes, didn't do that. So the hyperbole is beyond belief, I think, in this regard. This is a relatively disruptive series of events, but it would not spell the end of the United States if they were overturned.
Maybe I wonder if this is a question for a lawyer, but I'm going to ask it to you, Ron. If you are an individual citizen who's paid a tariff, say the company didn't levy the tariff in their prices, but you had to pay UPS, the shipper, how would you go about getting your money back if these are overturned?
This is a tough question. I'm not sure it's possible. You'd have to go and petition the company from which you bought a particular product and then determine by how much that product was marked up, if they did it at all during this initial period here, to determine whether or not you are eligible for a refund. And then the company has to go along with it. I don't know what the legal mechanisms are for individuals getting that money back, but there is a series of I should say, an avenue of redress for companies to get those import taxes refunded, if indeed it comes to pass.
Akayla, I'm going to put up a headline from the Wall Street Journal. The middle class vibe has shifted, from secure to squeezed. After months of tracking high-income earners' positive economic outlook, Americans' middle-income households appear to be losing confidence. I mean, that's just one of many different headlines that convey that the tariffs are not exactly making people feel good. Is the White House paying any attention to this? Are they sensitive to it?
Well, we've seen in the data, inflation hasn't really seen significant uptick yet with tariffs, but that might not be true for the long term. We could see that change by the end of the year, perhaps early next year. But something that I'm watching particularly is if the Supreme Court rules on this perhaps next year, early winter, spring. If they say President Trump is not allowed to move forward with these tariffs, will the president then go to Republicans in Congress and ask them to implement that? And this could put them in a very politically sticky situation. We've seen Republicans say time and time again that they've heard from their constituents, even if they support the tariffs, that they're feeling squeezed or that they're worried about how the tariffs are going to impact their wallet. So that could put them in a very sticky situation. We know the Constitution says Congress does have this power explicitly to impose tariffs. So that's something that I'm watching if we're going to see ultimately the White House turn to Capitol Hill.
Is the stock market sensitive to this, Ron? I mean, I know they're riding high right now on AI futures, but are they going to be reacting to consumer confidence?
Well, I think there's two things that the market's riding high on, as you say, or getting high on its own supply, as it were. Number one is the AI build out, the boom, the data centers, all of the infrastructure that's going along with artificial intelligence being more rapidly deployed. And then number two, the prospects for an interest rate cut in September from the Federal Reserve has added a little extra incentive for individuals to buy stocks or institutions as well. So those are the two primary things. Now, how this decision affects the market tomorrow morning remains to be seen, because to a certain extent, if indeed the tariffs were to be rolled back, that could mean less inflationary pressure and more room for the Federal Reserve to cut rates on a sustained basis. So I think we're going to have to go through this kind of step by step to see how equity markets and bond markets respond to what happened late Friday night.